Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Mary Ellen Zung, certified holistic health coach. And as a health coach, I educate people about feeling better through food. And I really am passionate about that. The food that you eat and the decisions that you make, what you put in your body really has an impact on both your physical and emotional and mental health as well. So let's get into it. Um, Sugar comes in many forms beyond the white powder we often associate it with. And some are claimed to be better than others, and some have names you wouldn't even recognize on an ingredient label. The whole subject of sugar in the health industry is very confusing. I hear questions all the time. It's okay in moderation. Your body isn't designed to digest sugars. Sugar-free products are always healthy. Artificial sweeteners are worse. You need sugar for energy. And sugar is addictive. So all of these are common claims to do with sugar, and they're opposing one another. So one thing is for certain, we are consuming more sugar in our diets than we ever have. So according to the US Department of Agriculture, the average American consumes 150 to 170 pounds of refined sugars per year. So you can compare that to 4 to 6 pound yearly consumption of the early 1800s, or even a high 90-pound consumption in the 1900s. And you probably think that can't be right. That's a lot of sugar. But that 150 to 170 pounds a year translates to a quarter to a half a pound, or 30 to 60 teaspoons of sugar per day per person. And it's hard to believe that we're capable of that. But keep in mind, we're not just consuming sugar in our coffee and our baked goods. It's hidden in the majority of foods you probably eat rather regularly. So sugar, as I mentioned, is added to foods that you wouldn't expect. I wonder if you can name a few, maybe as I let a few more people into the presentation here. If you can put that into the chat. What do you find that what kind of foods do you find hidden sugar, or those occult sugars that we talk about? And welcome to those who just joined. So maybe you thought of some of these right away. We know that it's hidden in ketchup, barbecue sauces, tomato sauces, marinades, salad dressings, yogurts, breads, protein bars. They're supposed to be healthy for us, right? Peanut butter, soups, canned fruits, cereals, crackers, oatmeal, frozen dinners, and so many more. So this list doesn't even include the obvious culprits of soda, cookies, and ice cream. These are sort of more of the occult, the hidden sugars, but these are just some of the many surprising ways that sugar sneaks into our diets. And one of the main reasons you may not recognize all the sugar you have in your diet is because it rarely will say sugar on the ingredient list of the food you buy. There are about 61 names for added sugar. And instead of the word sugar, you may see things like this. Dextrose, maltose, dextrin, sucrose, sorbitol, galactose, rice malt, et cetera, right? So a few tips in identifying sugar is looking for words that end in "-ose" or "-ides". So examining the entire ingredients list is often, is really the best thing to do. Not just look at those total added sugars on the nutrition fact label, but really dig into the entire ingredient list. And oftentimes you'll see more than one type of sugar. So what's the big deal anyway with sugar? If sugar is already in all the food we eat, then why should we care? It's not like everyone is sick, right? The problem with excessive sugar consumption is that most health issues do not manifest immediately. And if they do, they're not usually recognized as being caused by our diets. Mental illness, behavioral problems are often attributed to other sources in the diet, beyond diet. Allergies, arthritis, migraines are explained by our environment, stress levels, and response to medication. Immune disorders, degenerative diseases, diabetes, and cancer take time to diagnose, and most people aren't grabbing their food journals at this point to search for the connection. However, there's more research being conducted on the effects of sugar on human health by the day. And let me tell you, it's not looking too great for sugar's case. To best understand how sugar is so dangerous, you need to understand what it's made of. So before sugar leaves the digestive tract, it's composed of two simple sugars, glucose and fructose. So glucose is an important energy source and easy to obtain. If we're not consuming it in our diets, our bodies will produce it through other carbohydrates that we eat. It's as simple as that. And however, fructose is different. Our bodies do not produce much of it. And quite frankly, there is no need for it to do so. In fact, there's no proven physiological need for fructose at all. The relationship between sugar and insulin resistance has become a crucial topic of discussion in the nutrition science and the medical field. Insulin is, just letting someone else in. Insulin is one of the most important hormones in our bodies, and it's responsible for directing glucose into our cells to be used for energy. However, when our cells no longer respond to insulin, our body receives the message that it needs to produce more. And in response, the pancreas makes more insulin. But over time, the pancreas is unable to keep up with the demand, and blood sugar is no longer able to be maintained. And this is known as insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is thought to be a big contributor into many diseases. Let me just let somebody else in here. Okay. So including things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease. And even Alzheimer's disease, which is now, people are starting to talk about it as type 3 diabetes. It's like a whole metabolic syndrome conundrum. Even after these diseases develop, elevated blood sugar remains an ongoing problem. And this excess is often the reason people with these illnesses experience other complications like blindness in diabetes, for example. So let's move forward. It's no secret that obesity is a serious epidemic. 1 of 3 children and 2 out of every 3 adults are either overweight or obese in the United States. And sugar's role in gaining weight is much more serious than just adding in some empty calories. Instead, it affects the hormones responsible for satiety and the feelings of satisfying your hunger. And therefore, it leads you to eat more and more. And if you can mute your microphone, that would be great for those of you that just joined us. Thank you. So knowing this alone strengthens the case that there is a 60% increased risk of obesity in children for every daily serving of sugar sweetened beverages in their diets. And it's important to note that weight gain from sugar is often present in the abdominal area. This visceral fat breeds a higher risk profile for many other diseases, and some even life-threatening. Sugar is the leading factor in the rise in obesity among many other serious health complications. So, liver health. Fructose, as I mentioned, one of the main components of sugar, is metabolized by the liver, but only in significant amounts at a time. And this wouldn't be a problem if everyone minimized their sugar intake significantly and increased their daily physical activity. Typically, the fructose would be turned into glycogen and be stored in the liver for safekeeping until our bodies were ready to burn this energy reserve. However, if there's already an ample amount of glycogen in the liver, eating more sugar overloads it. And this extra is forced to be turned into fat. And this process is the beginning of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, among other complications. The non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it's on the rise. And even in children, it's 1 in 10 now. And that's doubled in the last 20 years. And to take it even further, some studies have suggested that sugar can be just as damaging as alcohol to the liver, even if you're at a healthy weight. And luckily, the liver can repair itself, but with continuous sugar consumption, it can never catch a break. So there have been many misconceptions about what causes cardiovascular disease, the role of cholesterol, and what foods help or harm health. And things have been cleared up a bit in the nutrition science. Saturated fat is not the culprit. Sugar is really the culprit. So sugar consumption is a leading contributor to that #1 killer in the world, which is heart disease. And studies have shown that consuming a large amount of fructose can cause a rise in bad cholesterol, that LDL, blood glucose, insulin levels, and abdominal obesity. And these findings were apparent in as little as 10 weeks. And all of these factors are major factors in developing heart disease. So sugar affects our immunity as well. Our immune system is responsible for defending our bodies against illness, and that's a big deal. So for your immune system to be compromised, you're putting yourself in danger of pathogens that can make you very sick. And according to a study through Loma Linda University, 100 grams of sugar can make your white blood cells 40% less effective in killing germs. On top of already putting your body in a stressed and irritated state, sugar directly affects your main line of defense against disease. And the most alarming part about this is that sugar's crippling effects stay present in your system for up to 5 hours after you eat it. It's hard to believe that something that is so prevalent in our everyday diets can cause cancer. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's true. Cancer is uncontrolled growth and the multiplication of cells. It's also one of the leading causes of death worldwide. So how is sugar related? Insulin. Insulin is one of the main hormones responsible for regulating the growth of these cells. And it's been concluded that having constantly elevated insulin levels can indeed contribute to cancer. So do you remember what I said about insulin and sugar? Consuming sugar raises insulin levels. And now there's a considerable amount of evidence how this contributes to cancer risk and progression and poorer recovery outcomes after medical treatment. Sugar also affects our brain quite significantly. Studies have shown that sugar slows down the brain's function, hinders new learning, and decreases memory recall. And there are also strong connections between high sugar intake and the prevalence of depression and anxiety. What do you think of when you think of a sugar crash? Is it maybe irritability, decreased mood, brain fog, fatigue? And now imagine that not going away. Foods rich in sugar disrupt our brain's neurotransmitters that work to stabilize our moods. However, if we're continually disrupting the function of these receptors, we no longer have the inherent control over our moods as we usually do. So the big question, are you addicted? Sometimes we use the word addiction lightly, saying you're addicted to your favorite food, for example. isn't necessarily encompassing the real meaning of the word. So bear with me. I'm just going to read to you and listen in the American Society of Addiction Medications definition of addiction. Addiction is a primary chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. Dysfunction in these circuits leads to characteristic biological, psychological, social, and spiritual manifestations. And this is reflected in an individual pathologically pursuing reward and or relief by substance use and other behaviors. Addiction is characterized by an inability to consistently abstain, impairment in behavioral control, craving, diminished recognition of significant problems with one's behavior and interpersonal relationships, and a dysfunctional emotional response. Like other chronic diseases, addiction often involves cycles of relapse and remission. Without treatment or engagement in recovery activities, addiction is progressive and can result in disability or premature death. Ooh, I know that's a pretty long definition, but I felt like it was important to really know what we're talking about when we say I'm addicted to sugar, or what addiction really means. So you've heard of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's responsible for controlling the reward and pleasure responses of the brain. And when you eat a lot of sugar, a massive amount of dopamine is released in your brain. As you continue to consume sugar, the dopamine receptors become less powerful, making the response less effective. And more sugar is needed to create that same euphoric dopamine reaction. And this continues into a vicious cycle, much like what happens with drug addictions. A popular study proved the addictive qualities in sugar with rats and Oreo cookies. The pleasure regions of previously drug addicted rats' brains were significantly more active when exposed to the Oreo cookies compared to cocaine. A later study showed that the brains of people with food addiction reacted to sugar the same way as drug addicts react to drugs. And this is truly proof that sugar can take over our brain chemistry and deliberately make us crave more of it. So while sugar is very obviously a negative contribution to our health and lives, not all sugars are created equally, and some are much worse for us than others, and of course, vice versa. So let's go through some sugars that should definitely be avoided as much as possible, as well as some that are okay to have in small amounts. So you want to stay clear of aspartame, sucralose, and high fructose corn syrup, according to me and other professionals and scientists. So aspartame, we'll just go through what they are and think about, do you use any of these? This is a chemical sweetener. It's best known for its appearance in diet sodas. And some people can tolerate it well in the short term, while others report migraines and digestive distress. So regardless of the initial reaction, aspartame has been proved pretty dangerous in isolated situations. For example, the University of Liverpool conducted a study where aspartame was mixed with a common food coloring. And the result was clear toxicity to brain cells. So additionally, researchers found that when aspartame breaks down, it creates formaldehyde, which is a well-known carcinogen. Sucralose, that's commonly known as the name Splenda, and it's processed using chlorine. Researchers are also finding that the waste of those consuming this sugar can't be broken down in wastewater treatment centers. Imagine what that means for the inside of our bodies. And then high fructose corn syrup. This one may be a bit more challenging to avoid. It's in almost everything, processed foods. This sweetener plays a huge role in the fat buildup in the liver, leptin resistance, and major weight gain. And a study even found that high fructose corn syrup is sometimes laced with mercury. And mercury is a heavy metal linked to heart disease and developmental disorders like autism. So don't worry, I'll be suggesting some other little sweeteners. So safer, try stevia. It's a plant. It's an extract made from the leaves of the stevia plant, and it's shown to help balance fasting blood sugar levels, cholesterol, insulin resistance, and blood pressure. But it's important to pay attention to the source of stevia. Some brands include additives, so be sure to always check the label, the ingredient label, and see what else is in there. Some of the, like Truvia, they sell has added sugar, just regular cane sugar inside. Coconut sugar is a natural sweetener. It's unrefined and it still contains all of the vitamins and minerals. It doesn't contribute to the strong fluctuations in blood sugar like other refined sugars. So that's one of the least bad. And raw honey has less fructose and has other health benefits, including promoting heart health and fighting inflammation. So as always, too much of a good thing can be bad. So keep in mind that these alternatives still do break down into glucose and fructose in your body. And all sweeteners should be used infrequently. Although it is ideal, it's not really practical to cut out sugar entirely. As I mentioned before, it's hiding in nearly everything. However, finding healthier alternatives, practicing moderation, and being aware of the dangers is the best way to take action on the case against sugar. I know I just shared a ton of information with you and it may be a bit overwhelming. That's okay. Changing your eating habits is still letting people in. Changing your eating habits and taking control of your health requires a lot of effort, but it's incredibly rewarding. You'll experience a higher quality of life, maintain a healthy weight, have more natural energy, and can prevent serious illness too. So there's so much value in kicking sugar to the curb and becoming the healthiest version of you you can. So if you need help with support on phasing sugar out of your diet, I'm absolutely here to help. So I have a program that's coming up, and if I can put the information in the chat, it's a 10-week group sugar detox. So I can send you more information about that. If you'd like to put your email in the chat, I can send you the link and you can read more about that. And I just want to thank you for being here. I love sharing this topic with people who are eager to transform their health. And this was great being with you today. I hope you found it valuable. And if you have further questions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to stop the recording in a minute. And I will also put my email address in the chat, which is coachmaryellen@outlook.com. And I appreciate you. So let's see if I can end this recording.